I think this is Politics with Clay and Ferno, and we're going to cover some news of the day. We're going to talk about what I've been up to lately and what's happening in the world, because I feel like we need to exercise our First Amendment rights and speak truth to power. The world is out of control, and I don't know if I wasn't paying attention for a lot of my life, but I am paying attention now. And at some points, maybe around 2016, I think I was paying too much attention. I had Twitter on my phone, and that would be at work, and I would just constantly be refreshing. By the way, there's a documentary on Max, now HBO Max, called Breaking the Bird, which is a fascinating look at the history of Twitter right up until the time oligarch Elon Musk, who I'm convinced didn't steal the election, but I'm convinced that his influence and his buying of Twitter was all part of a grand plan to make sure that Trump got in the White House again, by manipulating information. So I think that putting out good information for people is the way to go. And the only way to combat this is by learning and listening. And I'm not going to source everybody correctly, but I'm taking the lessons, and people are saying that a big coalition, so not just like the coalition between like the Bernie progressives and the regular rest of the Democratic Party, let's say like Pete Buttigieg or whatever. That's not going to do it. We are going to have a coalition of everyone from farmers to gig workers to Starbucks employees to this is class war. What's happening right now? Class war is what's happening. It's not about left or right really anymore at all. This is all about follow the money, and politics has always been about follow the money, right? But the way that we get out of this, and it's a long road until the midterms, it's a long road until the next election for president, hoping that we have elections. But getting our voice out there, the 5150, 501, 5150, whatever it is, not the Van Halen, you know what I mean? Those protests, go to them and show our numbers in the streets. And as I was going to set up for the Substack Live, I found this. So please enjoy A Cup of Clay, which was only going to be a book to stack up my phone in the weird situation they have here on Substack where you can't connect a good mic to the thing. But please enjoy my cup of clay. I'm going to talk about a couple of things right off the top and then break it down and talk about some news stories that have happened. And right before I decided to do this live, or decided to hit the live button, got the very sad news about former President Biden's cancer diagnosis. So if you don't know that, that's very fresh news. And he has an aggressive form of prostate cancer. And look, one thing that I know is that dealing with cancer sucks. We've all probably lost people in our lives, or know somebody that has lost someone close to you has lost someone close to you. And this really, really is a hard thing to deal with, and it's a hard thing to deal with as a country specifically. And one thing that I know is that we really have lost the humanity And the first thing that a regular president would do would well wish President Biden and his family, knowing what his son has gone through and has since passed. And the human thing to do, the presidential thing to do, would be to wish Joe Biden recovery. And we're not going to see that. We're going to see it politicized. We're going to see this poor old man who's made mistakes. And Jake Tapper will tell you he's made mistakes. His now seemingly very poorly timed book about the cover up of the Biden downfall and him choosing on a second time, and perhaps that he cost us the election, which is true. I think that I was very much in opposition to the fact that was kind of, I felt a little gaslit maybe by the leadership of the Democratic Party, and we should have run primaries. When Ezra Klein said we should have had primaries, I said, "Oh, you're crazy! Like, this guy's fine." No, he wasn't fine. But what we have to do is show empathy, right? Like, we need to show empathy for a human being that has sacrificed so much of his life in the service of the great American idea that we're here together and that we help each other out. And just like, but if he was like only had been a senator and not even vice president, like, or had um just a human being that has such great love for his family, I think we have to have a lot of empathy and say that this old man is sick and that we should wish him only well, because the end is inevitable for all of us. It could come sooner and it could come later. I think a lot about death, and I'm not trying to be morbid, but I lost my mom, almost lost my dad, but my dad is older. He's not as old as Joe Biden, but I think about mortality, and I'm grateful that my dad is around every day in my life. So what we won't see is any sort of good, empathetic messaging from these Trump MAGA Republicans. They're going to not exactly politicize it. They're going to show it as a sign of weakness that this man has cancer. And it's going to be awful. It's going to be awful. I'm preparing you, because the shit they're going to say is going to really bum you out. It's really going to be terrible. So all we can do is like use our voice and send our well wishes to the former President Biden in all of the crazies are going to come out and be crazy. Let's start with talking about not a lighthearted story because people died, but there was this incident with the Brooklyn Bridge, right? So apparently there was a tall ship, and I'm just going to pull up some news here. I usually look at the news on my phone, so like a tall ship like you'd see with sails and everything from Mexico hit the Brooklyn Bridge, and people died, and like the mast on the top like hit it. You can see the video, and it's a Mexican Navy ship, and it was on a promotional tour, and people's lives were lost. And it's scary to be on a boat. That boating and the Navy and sailing, especially sailing, is dangerous. and it's a miracle that two dead, multiple injured. It's a miracle that when people get on a boat, they don't instantly die, basically. Um, but there's safety issues, and there's obviously like poor planning. And I'm going to talk about Christy Noam in a second, and talk about traveling for a second in a second. But also the fact that Sean Duffy, who is basically in charge of the FAA, is a complete moron, has completely fucked up the FAA, and it's not safe or cool to fly. But back to the Mexican Navy ship. It reminded me of when I was a Boy Scout, proudly carrying the colors of the flag. I was really young, Cub Scout even, and I was in my former kindergarten, and we were asked to carry our colors through on a little parade, an assembly, or maybe some troop thing. I don't know, but the auditorium was packed. And this story I think about like all the time, horrific memory of my childhood. So there I am, I'm just on my little Cub Scout uniform, and I'm like always really stiff and nervous for stuff like this. You have the flag, and it's on a little post, which is down by your nutsack, and it holds the flag in there, but you have to hold it up like this. And they're like, go straight that way, take a left, and then stand in front of everybody holding the flag. I think I had the US flag. The person next to me had like the Massachusetts flag or our troop flag. And I didn't think I was like such a little kid, and I don't know why I'm embarrassed about this to this day, but I was such a little kid that I was like not given very clear instructions. The whole Boy Scout, Cub Scout system was like that for me the whole time. No one really told me what to do. And you're like a kid, you don't know what you're supposed to do. So I'm carrying the thing, and then I like stop because I feel like some resistance. But I'm just like laser focused on walking, 20 paces, taking a left, and I felt some resistance, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't think to look up. I did not think to look up. Just like the new Superman movie. Look up. And then what happened was the flag hit the streamers that they had set up, and I pulled down the streamers, and then like all the streamers were connected in this whole auditorium, so they all went like from this side, and then from the other side. So the whole entire crowd had the streamers like fall on them, and of course I got in trouble and was like, "You idiot! Why didn't you look up when you were like pulling the thing?" But I mean, they were just streamers, so it's not like people got hurt or anything. And I was embarrassed, in the whole pomp and circumstance of being like a little kid and having the responsibility to carry the flag was like, it was like a lot. And the thing is that they just do not prepare you for what you're supposed to know, like be aware of your surroundings. Oh, maybe if I was an adult, I would tell a kid, yeah, you're holding the flag, make sure you don't hit the streamers. That would have been very helpful. But anyways, I see this poor tragedy that happens at the Brooklyn Bridge, and I could only be reminded of that flag story when I saw the mast hit the thing, and yeah, people died. People died. It's really terrible and sad. Those ships are beautiful though. There was a couple years ago, I guess this ship had been here in Boston like 2 years ago or so, and I think maybe like 10 years ago, less than 10 years ago, I had gone and seen the tall ships when they came. And you get to like kind of go on them and like take cool pictures. It's beautiful. Like we have Old Ironsides USS Constitution here in Boston, which you can visit anytime. One of our many many free things you can do because it's like such a part of history, and we're lucky to live in Boston, which has such a rich history. Now, it doesn't help when they cut down the National Park Service and they cut funding to those things. And it doesn't help when one of my major clients, the Lowell Folk Festival, gets cut 20 grand grant from the NEA to support a free art festival. It's been going on for like nearly 50 years. And why wouldn't you want to have people have music and fun and joy and art? Um, that's where you're going to cut money from. I mean, maybe we cut some money from the defense budget, you know, with Doge and all that. Like, you're going to cut money from arts funding. That just means that society is really in a lot of trouble. Anyways, let's go back to so I gave you the news about the Navy ship, and it's tragedy and sad, and I hope people are okay. And I'm sorry that people lost their lives. I'm empathetic and sympathetic human being, you know. I want to talk about traveling because last week I did some traveling for work, which is, it's kind of what I do. Backstage stuff. In a way, I kind of was like a tour manager for an act. It's not important who, but I had to travel. And of course, I traveled on the day that Real ID became a thing. So you need to have Real ID to get on a domestic flight. And back when I renewed my license the last time, I didn't have to scramble. I had already gotten this squared away. I think my license renews next year. So I'm all set. I'm all good. I still do need to get my passport squared away, but Stacy and I are going to do that together. Anyways, I go to the airport, show my Real ID, and then it's scanning through the thing, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't you." And immediately they have a little camera thing where for facial recognition. Now, as a warning and as a public service, you do not have to do the facial recognition. You do not want to do the facial recognition. It is optional. It clearly says actually on the camera, this is optional. But you've got your bag, you got to take your shoes off, you got to do all this stuff. You're worried about whether you're going to take your belt off, and like you have your boarding pass and you're trying to get through to travel. So who's paying attention to like a little yellow words on the sign? Probably 90% of everybody is not. And also they rely on that. It's a psychological thing. They tell you need to look in the camera, and you do it just because we've been trained by school and everything else. Like, you need to do what we ask you to, right? And Evan Greer, who's a local musician to Boston, has a really great song about opting out of facial recognition. I'm gonna link to it when I post this later. It's completely optional. Back to me. I'm going on the trip for a couple of days. No big deal. I'm all packed up. I'm tight. I got my Pelican filled with gear. I've got my one bag. I travel. I jam econo, as they say. Mike Watt says from the Minutemen, jam econo. And I get up there, and my Real ID won't scan. Like, okay, is that your problem? Probably your problem, TSA. TSA, it's your problem because my license is valid. I'm there. I have a Real ID. I have so many other IDs. I have another government state issued ID on me, valid, that doesn't expire till a little while. Not acceptable as a backup. How about these 10 credit cards? How about any other way that you, the government, can look up and see that I am me? So I did take the picture this one time. I took the picture, and then what happened was they said, well, it doesn't match. And I haven't wildly changed my appearance, this whole time. I mean, I do have new teeth, but that shouldn't really make a mismatch on the computer for facial recognition. Um, so anyways, I'm sitting there like, you just gotta wait. And granted, I'm an early airport guy, to the chagrin of anybody I travel with. I get there like 2 hours early, even for domestic flights. It's ridiculous. But you know what? I needed that time because they said you need to wait. So I'm waiting. Waiting for what? I'm waiting for some asshole to come over and verify this manually or something. And this guy is like talking about going on his break, and he's chatting around, dicking around, talking with the other people he's working with. I didn't get my break yet. That kind of shit that you say while you're working. You know what? I'm sure the TSA people themselves are nice and they're just trying to get through their day, whatever. He wanted to get on his break, which I sympathize with, right? But I'm sitting there, they're making me wait, they're scanning other people in. Not one person has opted out of the facial recognition. Not one. Nobody. Nobody's opting out, by the way. At the airport, nobody's opting out. They can, but nobody's doing it. Nobody. I'm waiting. I was like, what do you need to do? Like, do you need to talk to someone? Because this is after like 10 minutes. Like, who needs to come in? Who needs to check this out? Like, where's your supervisor? Oh, we've radioed for him. He's told me like 3 times that he's called on the radio. And then like, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I'm not like that close to flight time because I am there very early, but still, I want to get him there, get my dunks, get ready, charge up my stuff, do some work at the gate. I'm like one of those people. Eventually, after about 20 minutes, someone comes over, and I forget exactly what they did. Kept scanning my thing, wouldn't scan. Who knows? And then he goes, "Oh yeah, you're fine." The supervisor guy lets me through. I get him on flight. Complain to my girlfriend. Oh, blah blah blah. This just happened to me. And she's like, "Oh yeah, her friend Jeannie and her had just gotten back from vacation." She's like, "You don't have to do facial recognition." Jeannie said she didn't do it. And I said, "Oh, really? Well, I'm not going to do it next time because they want a first real ID. They don't believe me, who I am, an American citizen with valid ID and this contraption." So that is all to collect information on you and your whereabouts at all times. Urge you to opt out. I can tell you that I had to take 3 or 4 other flights for this little trip. Every time I walked up to the thing, I gave my real ID, and they said, "Look into the camera." I said, "I'm not doing that." They didn't, no guff, no nothing. They didn't like give me attitude or anything. They just said, "Okay." And they looked at my ID like you do as a bouncer at a club. And they said, "Yeah, that's clearly you." And they let me through. And it was less hassle than getting my facial recognition scanned in the surveillance state. When you get into the airport, you know what's frustrating? Kristi Noem's face, dog killer Kristi Noem, her face is fucking everywhere. It's everywhere. It's on these gigantic TVs and all this, loudspeaker announcements. She's talking and, make sure you don't pick up a bag. Somebody's like trying to give you a bag. All the announcements that were just by like regular people, or maybe it was I don't know who it was before her, but there's something insidious about her. Number one, she's got to be like one of the worst people to ever be in government ever. If you look at her in front of Congress trying to answer questions, she does not know what she's talking about. Like, and also is just a mean grifter that's just like looking to enrich herself after this administration is over, and also is just a mean person that takes joy in incarcerating people, sending them to other countries without due process, and she's just eating it up. So you leave it to a dog killer to act that way, and then you go into the airport and her face like Big Brother is like all around you. And it's just disgusting. And we'll get to the news about Trump going to the Middle East. But Christy Dog Killer Gnome has like a security detail and everything, obviously. But she has a plane that's at her service. And she is demanding like a gigantic upgrade to the thing. So the administration that is looking to cut back and go in there with a knife and just gut everything from the government, she's demanding a private plane, a better one. She has one. She wants a better one. And it's just really disappointing that this is the state we're in right now. Okay, it sucks, and I urge everybody to do something. And what am I doing? I'm just talking on my Substack live to a few people, but I feel like I'm doing something, because we're really going to have to get involved and speak out about these things and tell people about the terrible TSA and the Department of Homeland Security. And I'm going to probably end up on some list now because I put this out there and AI is going to capture it. And the next time I go to the airport, it's going to be even more awful than it was when I came to Logan last week. And it's just the worst. So while we're on the topic of planes, Donald Trump, President Trump, goes to the Middle East. Doesn't go to meet our Democratic Alliance partners, the UK or anything. Goes to the Middle East, gets his balls licked by every leader of the area, including Mohammed bin Salman, who murdered an American journalist and chopped him into pieces. And as much as Joe Biden gave him a fist bump, which I don't think is cool, he tells Mohammed bin Salman how much he loves him. And that's not for the interest of the American people. It is for the interest of Trump and the Trump family. Then he is offered a plane from Qatar, $400 million plane to essentially replace Air Force One, and builds into this deal that he would get to keep the plane after his administration is over. Air Force One is it's the Oval Office in the sky, right? And you're telling me that it's acceptable for a US president to take a present from a Middle Eastern country that funds Hamas, and that they're not going to have spyware or anything on that plane? Accepting a president from a Middle Eastern country. When I was in college and we were in the first Gulf War, and then even in the second Gulf War, it was like no blood for oil. Now it's an even worse trade. It's democracy for oil. It's our whole thing, our 250-year-old tradition of freedom and democracy being sliced off like a kebab. Just like, hey, you want some of this? You want some of this? You can have some of this. Instead of money, we'll give you a plane. And then when that favor is called for down the line and the Trump administration needs to back some terrible thing that Hunter has done, then it's like, hey, you owe me. I gave you a $400 million plane. It's just disgusting. I don't have any hate toward like Muslims or Muslim Americans or anything like that. But let's not forget that the 9/11 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia, okay? Let's not forget that Mohammed bin Salman chopped up Jamal Khashoggi, an American journalist, killed him. How could you forget that? Why would you go be celebrated by these people? We know why. Because you're corruptible and completely do not have the interests of the American people in mind. Only the enrichment of the oligarchs and only the enrichment of the Trump family itself. It's just, it's fucking disgusting. And also, maybe I'm a little worked up, but I really think that we need to do something. Now, you can kind of say, like, what can I do? How can I drink from this cup of clay? I just do anything, man. That's all I'm saying. Do anything. Do anything. Organize. Call your Congress people. You know, like, make sure that we can preserve what is left of our democracy. Now, I'm not in the business of trying to convince MAGA people to join our side. But if that's what it's going to take, because they're going to see that this whole terror thing is bullshit and that the oligarchs really are taking our money and doing whatever the fuck they want with it. And not only that, they're taking our information, they're taking our facial recognition and giving it over to AI and Grok and whatever Elon Musk had access to. They want us to be sheep. This is literally class war. They want us to be the serfs, and they're up there, and we're down here. But down here, there's a lot of us. Okay, there's a lot of us down here, and we are not going to be fooled into thinking that any of this is right or normal. Bribery in the presidential office and whatever Doge was trying to do, whether they even did anything. And I haven't gotten into like a lot of stuff here. Like, we could talk forever about RFK. We could talk forever about Vladimir Putin. We could talk about people's reactions to some things that, even to be fair, well, I don't know much about it, but like, not lifting sanctions from Syria. Maybe that's a good thing. Like, maybe they accidentally came across a good policy. But I'm not that educated about it. So there are so many things to talk about, but when I have more action to talk about, specific things we can do, I will share that with you because in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm that little boy holding the American flag and without a lot of direction was told to walk this way. And without the direction, which I can say for the last 10 years, like the direction from the leaders in the Democratic Party, I was following what they said. And basically what happened was the streamers fell. The streamers have fallen, but they're also on fire and everyone got hurt. Okay. So I don't think it's fair for me to just say, you got to do something, like the famous Uncle Sam, I need you. But I'm that kind of patriot. Okay. I might be a Democrat, progressive, I find myself in the center sometimes, but I believe in free speech in America and the Constitution. And I believe that I am that little boy carrying that flag. I'm still carrying that flag. I might have made a mistake, right? But the country's made a lot of mistakes. And I am looking to seek and connect with other like-minded people here on Substack, Blue Sky, Facebook, wherever you can find me, TikTok. I like to amplify voices that I really like. So you'll see I'll post a lot of YouTube videos and I do a lot of ingesting. I take a lot of it in. I take in the Midas Touch. I take in Tim Miller from the Bulwark, Molly Jong-Fast, Steve Schmidt, Rick Wilson. These are not people that all think the same way, but I bring it in. And if they are ever advising me to do something, to enact change, then I will do it. And I hopefully can add to that choir of people that really love America and what we stand for, and civil rights, LGBTQ rights, and the rights of just regular American citizens. This poor girl from Somerville that got shipped to the detention center, I still can't even wrap my head around how she wrote a blog post against the administration's policies and ended up in jail. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me that this is the country we live in. So I've kind of been all over the place, but I expected it to be because I don't have a script here. This is unscripted stuff. Wishing Joe Biden a speedy recovery. And just be careful, everybody out there. Be careful about what you hear about Joe Biden being ill. Be careful about when you travel. Look out for your friends and neighbors. Look out for ICE. Tell them to fuck themselves. Ask them for warrants. Okay? Be careful when you travel. Have your real ID. Don't do any facial recognition stuff. So this is like applies across the board on facial recognition. Don't do it at the airport. Don't do it at the bus station. Don't do it when someone asks you to. You don't know where that day is going to go. And you do not want to be in more of a surveillance state than we already are. We've already got our phones tracking us and everything. If you can opt out, anytime you can opt out of stuff like that, please do. Have a safe digital footprint. And I will sign off. Thank you for joining me and sticking around. And I really appreciate it. I am going to sign off and we'll release this podcast later on the regular feed. But thank you for joining me live. I was saying on my last one that I like to have a certain amount of posts every month for my paid Substack subscribers, but Also, it's always free, so I like to kind of pace it out and have a few every month, 3 or 4 posts, ideally. But sometimes I'm busy, sometimes I'm traveling, sometimes I'm in the airport, and it's tough to get these out. But going live, I feel like is a good way. I can have a post out there, get my thoughts out there, make a podcast out of it, and everybody wins. Substack platform is great, and all of my followers, I really appreciate you. And subscribe to the podcast, and subscribe to our other podcast, leakpodcast.com. You can find us on Spotify. Um, and yeah, that's it. Thank you. Peace, guys. Have a good one.